Welcome back to this channel for practice problems for actuarial exams. My name is Krzysztof Ostaszewski. You can find information about me at smarturl.it/Jedi. My advice on how to pass actuarial exams is at smarturl.it/pass. This video channel is at smarturl.it/pass actuarial exams. Here you have information about online seminars and study manuals for exams PFM, IFM, and LTAM that I offer. I direct the actuarial program at Illinois State University. You can find information about it at smarturl.it/actuary. If you would like to offer a tax-deductible donation to support our students at Illinois State University, please go to smarturl.it/help-ISU-actuary. Here's a problem for today for exam FM on financial mathematics. Determine which of the following statements is false. A. Both U.S. Treasury bonds and Government of Canada bonds are issued with terms to maturity of up to 30 years. B. The yields on both U.S. Treasury bonds and Government of Canada bonds are virtually risk-free. C. Bonds are issued at the state, provincial, and local levels in both countries with default rates greater than at the national level. D. For Government of Canada bonds denominated in Canadian dollars, yields are primarily based on the level of economic activity in Canada. For U.S. Treasury bonds denominated in U.S. dollars, yields are primarily based on the level of economic activity in the U.S. E. For Government of Canada bonds denominated in U.S. dollars, yields should be identical to otherwise equivalent U.S. Treasury bonds because the liquidity risk of the Government of Canada bonds will be the same as the liquidity risk of the U.S. Treasury bonds. And here's the solution. So the only part that was not true was answer E. Canadian bonds have somewhat higher yields because they have more liquidity risk, that is, they are traded less frequently and in lower volumes than the corresponding U.S. Treasury bonds. One of the main reasons for that situation is that the U.S. dollar is the dominant reserve currency in the world, that is, the currency in which governments keep their foreign currency reserves, and thus U.S. Treasury securities are purchased by investors all over the world, and there is no such global demand for Canadian government bonds. Note that this also applies to the situation when the Canadian government decides to issue bonds in U.S. dollars. So let's look again at these 5 answer choices. So A is true. Both U.S. Treasury bonds and Government of Canada bonds are issued with terms to maturity of up to 30 years. B is true. The yields on both U.S. Treasury bonds and Government of Canada bonds are virtually risk-free. C is true. Bonds are issued at the state, provincial, and local levels in both countries with default rates greater than at the national level. So, for example, the state of Illinois issues bonds, city of Chicago. In Canada, local governments of provincial level, or province of Ontario, for example, issue bonds, and the default levels are higher than the government. In the U.S., basically the government is constitutionally required to first make payments on U.S. federal government debt before the federal government makes payments on anything else. So that's a very, very, very high priority for payments. And Canadians, well, generally their public finances are somewhat better in terms of not borrowing and spending as much as Americans do, but then again, U.S. government, federal government budget is greater than most economies in the world. I think it's still bigger than the economy of Germany. The U.S. federal government spends a lot of money. And for Government of Canada bonds denominated in Canadian dollars, yields are indeed primarily based on level of economic activity in Canada, and for U.S. Treasury bonds denominated in U.S. dollars, yields are primarily based on the level of economic activity in the U.S. And for this last part, you may be surprised because we're talking about bonds denominated in U.S. dollars for both countries. So Canada is basically risk-free. They will pay back what they borrow. Why shouldn't their yields be identical to U.S. yields? And the answer is that there is this additional artificial demand for U.S. Treasury bonds by governments and central banks around the world. That's what they buy if they want to have foreign currency reserves in U.S. dollars. Please remember this is copyrighted material. The problem itself comes from the Society of Actuaries. The solution is mine. Good luck in your studies and good luck on the test.